virtually. Again, my name is Brent Crawford. I'm part of the consulting team with MIG on this project here with Darcy Rudzinski. And I'll just go ahead and share my screen and get us started. I've got a presentation. All right. Okay. You all seeing that all right?
Yep.
All right. So we'll just quickly go over the agenda. We'll just quickly update you on project updates, status, and timeline, which Kelly already mostly covered. So we'll just breeze through that pretty quickly, and then we'll touch on the comprehensive plan updates as well as the code update recommendations and some discussion items that we'd like to go over with you all. And then we also have a handful of other additional code updates that we just want to give you all a heads up on that we'll plan on addressing for the kind of the next package of code updates. Just so you're all aware, we haven't started them yet, but they're next on the docket. And then we'll just talk about overall project next steps. So just a quick recap on what has been done thus far. And since we last met, we finished the code and policy review audit. And we kind of put the finishing touches on that based on your input and the advisory committee's input and planning commission's input. We drafted the comprehensive plan amendments, which were fairly light. We didn't change much there. And then we addressed the high priority code amendments. So those were really the high priority HPS implementation items and also some other high priority things that you all and the advisory committee helped us identify. And then we reviewed those draft updates to the code amendments or draft amendments to the code with the advisory committee roughly 2 or 3 weeks ago. So just a quick update on the timeline. We're a little over halfway through on this project. You'll see this is our second briefing with you all, and we've had 2 advisory committee meetings. So we're just kind of right in the thick of drafting the code updates and going through various iterations of providing these drafts to advisory committee, you all taking your comments, making revisions, and it's kind of an iterative process and continue to do that till about probably late January to mid-February, and we'll plan on wrapping up and finalizing the code amendments in March and taking it to adoption in April. So just as a quick reminder, what the high priority recommendations from the code review were. Kelly already mentioned some of this, but to allow and create standards specifically for single lot or small lot single family development. That was from the HPS Action 1.1, update the city's current cottage cluster standards and basically implement the state's model code standards. Also a high priority HPS action. Just totally remove the city's existing infill development standards. So we addressed that in this last package. We also updated manufactured home park standards, and that was basically kind of, as Kelly mentioned, updates to ensure consistency with state rules, specifically around manufactured homes and manufactured dwelling parks. And then we also had a handful of other kind of cleanup items to just ensure that the code was internally consistent with the other updates we made. So to start off with our first high priority recommendation, small lot single family. So we recommend allowing this new use type in the medium density RM zone, the high density, the RH zone, and the MU zone, and allowing them outright, so through an OP process. In terms of the uh, lot dimension and development standards, we recommend a minimum lot size of 2,500 square feet, and we recommend a maximum height of 25 feet, lot coverage of maximum lot coverage, that is, of 60%, and a minimum lot width of 30 feet. And we recommend requiring a minimum of 2 off-street parking spaces. And we recommend uh, mostly requiring the same setbacks as the underlying zone, except for a reduced setback, um, reduced rear setback to 10 feet instead of the standard 20 feet. That's just to provide a little bit more site design flexibility for individual units. And we kind of illustrated that here in the graphic on the right in the slide. If you applied the existing setbacks to these kind of small lot dimensions, that really kind of hems in where the the dwelling unit can be sited on the lot, and it really only gives it about an 800 square foot footprint to be oriented in. So just reducing that setback provides a little more flexibility in that regard. So our other major recommendation was for cottage cluster standards. Kind of the overarching recommendation was to just implement state standards and be consistent with state requirements for large cities. And as you all probably know, Lebanon is not hasn't met the threshold of being a large city and therefore is not subject to middle housing rules for large cities yet. However, the city is growing and it's nearing that threshold. So our general recommendation is to at least get close to being consistent with the state rules for large cities. So when the city does reach that threshold, you'll just be compliant already. Um, so we recommend just using the state's definition from their model code standards, which some of the key elements of that definition and of what cottage clusters really are is a minimum of 4 dwelling units per acre, all located on a single lot and oriented around a common area, and each unit having a footprint of less than 900 square feet. So we recommend allowing these types on every residential zone. So really just every zone that currently allows single family homes outright. And that also includes the mixed use zone. The only kind of caveat here is instead of allowing them outright, we recommend allowing them through an administrative review process. So it's kind of a higher level of review and approval procedure compared to single family. We recommend a minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet and a maximum height of 25 feet. We recommend no lot coverage, uh, maximum lot coverages, and that's a state requirement. And although the city doesn't need to do that, it's also a recommendation just to provide that extra site design flexibility, and particularly with multiple units on a lot and already with the open space requirements for cottage clusters, just kind of feel that lot coverage can be kind of an unnecessary regulation to impose on this housing type. We recommend using the same lot width that applies to the underlying zone into single family. So that kind of ranges from 50 to 60 feet wide, depending on the zone. And we recommend requiring just 1 off-street parking space per unit. However, we had some discussion with the advisory committee on this, and have some options to for you all to consider as an alternative to this minimum requirement. And we also recommend essentially the same setbacks that apply to the underlying zone, which is 10 feet for the front and rear. However, there are a couple zones that have smaller minimum setback requirements of just 5 feet. So we recommend just kind of deferring to the smaller setbacks in those instances. And now we'll get to our discussion item that we wanted to get all your input on. So as I mentioned, we had some discussion with the advisory committee regarding uh, the appropriate amount of off-street parking for cottage clusters. And some of the concerns that were raised from advisory committee members had to do with uh, one off-street space not being enough for these smaller housing types, and that there are higher car ownership rates in Lebanon, and uh, some of the larger households that are more likely to have families in them are likely to also need more off-street parking space. So we kind of figured that um, kind of a compromise to the uh, minimum off-street requirements from the state are to scale the required number of off-street spaces based on unit size. So we think that if the unit is larger than 900 square feet total, including upper and lower stories, that and a possibility would be to require 2 off-street spaces. And if the unit is less than 900 square feet, you could require just 1 off-street space. So I guess to get to the questions that we wanted to discuss with you all, first, if the unit size is limited, can off-street parking needs be satisfied with 1 parking space per unit? Or if 900 square feet is a reasonable maximum unit size limit, and if the city should continue to require 2 off-street parking spaces per unit uh, for larger units that are over 900 square feet. So I will just open it up to discussion, or if anybody has any immediate feedback on those questions.
I still feel like that it should be 2 pieces of over. I'm more concerned really about, I know we can't maybe legislate rooms than feet. Am I on?
Yes.
I think I am. Because if it's a I got a house that's 3 bedrooms that I rent that's 900 square feet on paper. If there's 3 bedrooms, there's probably gonna be more than 1 car there. Just my opinion. So I don't know if it's a foot thing or a rooms thing.
Yeah, I can say like my first home was a little over 1,000 square feet and we had a truck, a car and a work rig. So, and that's just, 150 square feet larger than that 900. And I kind of agree with you with the room size piece. Like if there are 3 bedrooms in there, you
Yeah.
probably have 2 cars at least.
Was that a single family home or was that in a condo?
The single family home, mine is, I don't know about.
Yeah, just a little
Yep.
house, little 1940s house.
And I will add that it is possible or an option to uh, scale the number of off-street spaces by number of bedrooms. That some cities do that as well. So it's kind of up to the city as to whether you'd rather do it by total square footage or number of bedrooms.
I think bedrooms might be a little more relevant to me personally.
That was a conversation that was had at the PAC level as well. I will tell you universally that development wise, I think across the board, for any type of higher density housing, developers would appreciate seeing something more of a bedroom count parking rather than just a universally applied. That might be outside of the scope of what we're looking for right now. But if we do see a trend of going closer towards a bedroom count, that is something that I think we would want to be looking at the rest of our code to be doing as well. So.
Not
just
trying to
throwing
open a
it-
can of worms. Just kidding.
It might be a good can of worms to open up, but just throwing it out there.
Already opened it. And I guess I'm just kind of backing up. Administrative review, what does that mean as far as this? If, I mean, at least on planning commission, we do administrative reviews, it feels like, of stuff we really have no choice to say yes or no to. What leeway does an administrative review give you?
So the administrative review is the type of application. It is the black and white decision criteria, but the administrative review does include the public notification process as well. So it's generally speaking for the more than a few units, right? So it's generally the medium-sized to larger type developments. It allows for us to provide notification to the public to say, hey, there's a project going on in your community, so you're aware of it. But it does still provide the black and white decision criteria, which is required per state law when you're reviewing housing.
I figured that, just wanted to ask.
Yeah. But it does provide that component of at least letting us communicate with the public of what's going on.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I was just going to say that I'm not an advocate for reducing parking spaces. And the reason why is Lebanon's not exactly a place with mass transit. People buy vehicles, doesn't matter what income bracket they come from, they're going to have vehicles. And that's just the reality of it. The other thing, I guess this is more of a question for you, Kelly. 900 square feet, that to me implies a cottage. But if we make them two-story, that's 1,800 square feet roughly. Is that still considered a cottage?
For the state of Oregon in the cottage cluster that is still considered a cottage. The
Really? Okay.
It's only
Interesting.
1,200 square feet, and
Wow.
I have 4 cars. What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
Wow.
So the model code as it's drafted requires there to be an average, and Brandon, help me out on the exact amount. Is it 1,400 square foot average?
Correct. Yeah.
So, okay, so across the amount of cottages there, the model code says that you have to, the average unit size has to average out to 1,400 square feet or less.
Across
Across
the inventory of houses.
The inventory of houses within the cottage
Okay,
cluster.
okay.
This was definitely a point of conversation within the project advisory committee for a very long period of time. Specifically because of the cottage clusters are intended to meet certain housing type goals. And they're intended for densification, and you're restricted per state law in terms of if we are 25,000 and over to 1 parking space per unit. And if we were to, try to meet the goals of whether or not the model code works and is applied here or not, to try to fit within that as much as possible, right? So one of the things that the project advisory committee did identify was a significant interest in capping the unit size to a more reasonable size, which was the 900 square feet. 900 square feet keeps it to an intention of it being a starter home
Affordable
or
housing.
workforce housing type units, where it's not necessarily intended for a large family or multi-generational family type unit, right? That was the basis of the conversation in the project advisory committee, which is where these discussion points did come into play. Will it match with the state's model code? No. Do we have about 5,000 population in growth before we have to match the state's match the state's model code? Yes. So do we have that flexibility? Yes. What I will do is caution, well, I'll leave it up to Brandon and Darcy to articulate this a lot better than I will, but the model code went through rigorous studies to identify what would be marketable. They know that more than I do. And so if we amend the model code too much, the argument would be, is it going to be a tool that is going to be utilized or not? There is that checks and balance side of the equation. So things to think about. But this is Lebanon. We need to make sure that the code is comfortable and workable for the city of Lebanon as well. So there's the two sides of the coin that has to be thought about, is what's going to be actually developable versus what is going to be marketable within our community as well.
Yeah, Kelly, I think you put it pretty well. And yeah, to kind of add on or reiterate that the model code was developed kind of or informed by uh, market studies for these specific middle housing types, and it was really uh, designed to, be realistically implemented. So part of the reason why there are these unit size thresholds and minimum parking standards um, was the intention was so that these projects could realistically pencil in communities. So, for example, if a cottage cluster had minimum parking requirements of 2 units or 2 spaces per unit across the board, then it'd be a lot less feasible for a property owner or developer to provide that housing type. Um, and it's also kind of important to remember that this is just a minimum parking requirement. So if it is a larger property and if the finances work out, a developer could provide more spaces per unit, particularly in a town like Lebanon, where there's more of a market for that. But on the flip side, if it's just a small enough property, say a 7,000 square foot property, and they want to, get 5, 6 units on there, it might be difficult to make that pencil if they need to dedicate all the extra space to for off-street parking, especially when considering the open space requirements, setbacks, all the other lot dimension standards. So as Kelly mentioned, the city could still require 2 off-street spaces per unit. There's no obligation to be consistent with state rules since you don't meet that threshold. And once the city meets that threshold, could go back and reduce it, or could do the kind of middle ground approach where smaller units, say 900, 800 square feet, or only 1 bedroom, only require 1 space, and those that are larger with more bedrooms require more off-street spaces. Logic being larger households, more people, probably need more cars. So some things to consider.
Just to throw in another option, it doesn't have to be whole number spaces that we require. Not every single cottage occupant is going to require multiple vehicles just because they have multiple bedrooms. And so you could require maybe 1.5 spaces per unit. So some cottages might use 2, but some might just use 1. And so it provides a balance approach as well. Just to make it even more confusing for you all.
I'll donate my half. What's the code behind it? Okay, let's say, and I'm not a code guy, you are, luckily. What's the code if somebody comes into a place that already has on-street parking problems, and we're at a point where we can only require them to have 1, and all this, what happens then? What's the city code that stops them from parking all over the streets that are already full of cars?
Street parking is open to everybody. And so
That's where the problem starts.
And so just because people currently park there doesn't mean that anybody who owns property there, they also have development rights to develop property there per our code. And so then they have also the right to use the street that is in the neighborhood in which they live in as well or work in.
This is a different beast if it's on the edge of town out someplace with property around it than it is somebody comes in the middle of town and.
It's the equivalent of if you build a subdivision in an area versus if you build a duplex in an area versus any other type. Public streets are public streets, and everybody gets to use them.
Gotcha.
And along come the garbage truck and the street sweeper. And the fire department.
As is with all of our city streets now.
Any other questions on this portion? I guess we can move forward.
So I guess the general direction would be is currently the PAC has the concept of capping it at 900 square feet and maintaining it as one parking space is, I believe, what the PAC's recommendation was. Do you want to maintain the PAC's recommendation or go with something different?
It's not my real direction, but I'm the only one who said anything about it so far. I think in my simple, perfect world, it has to do with the rooms. And I get the 1.5 and figuring that stuff. But you can't tell somebody, let's say you move into a 900 square foot place, so you got one parking place, you can only have one car. That's not part of it, right? Give them one spot, but you can't dictate it.
Well, they can have more than one car, they just have to park second on the street.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So then you
yeah, that is already an issue here. At least in every neighborhood I'm go through.
I'm a big advocate for two, because even though they live in cottage clusters, they still have family, friends, I don't know, whoever that needs to park. And if the street's full, then they park 2 miles away and walk there. I don't know. So that's why I'm big on the two parking spots. So.
agree with the two parking spots. I know lots of retired people who live in my neighborhood who have at least 2 cars and a little mini camper or a little mini RV or whatever.
Golf cart.
Boat.
I know lots of people who are first-time home buyers who also have 2 vehicles because they work in Sweet Home, Corvallis, Albany, and need 2 vehicles. So I'm afraid that if we go less than 2,
Since I'm the one that raised the biggest ruckus for you
No.
about the parking spaces and our land yachts, as I said before, that I understand this is supposed to be also for workforce housing, that sort of thing, but the crummy doesn't come in at 4 o'clock in the morning and pick the loggers up anymore, and we don't have the mass transit to get people around. They're going to have more than one spot. So yet again, I'll say at least 2.
And I don't think we need to be ahead of the 25,000. I mean, this is to meet it, when we're at 25,000, we have to have one space, right? Or we are required to only have one space for cottage clusters.
When we get to the 25,000, we will have to amend our code to meet the state's
Perfect.
model code.
Well, then let's amend it when we
Oh,
get to 25,000.
Nothing retro, you can't go back to the old ones, right?
Right.
Well, I'll just say this is really not a super new concept. KJ, actually sitting on the council, the nonprofit that he's involved with, they own properties that are similar to this, and they have like 0 parking, and it's a big pain in the you-know-what to go into those properties. You have to find parking out on the street or whatnot. So yeah, that's just another example of.
We actually have off-street parking.
Do you at that one on Maple or on
On
Milton?
Rose? Not on Rose. We have one off-street parking on Rose, and only one is a pain. All the others have off-street.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a pain in the you-know-what, so.
It is.
an option to dictate of size for bedrooms. Like 2 parking spaces across the board, regardless of 900 square feet per bedroom.
It's what we do right now.
Is it working?
don't think that's the hurdle, though.
No, right? So we have cottage clusters on our books right now, and nobody's built them in the city because our code is not
Friendly.
whack, basically. And we have 2.25 parking spaces per unit in our apartment unit standards. But every single apartment complex automatically modifies their parking standards with earned parking reductions, which results in a 15% reduction across the board with additional bicycle parking, right? So it's really not at 2 spaces. It's below 2 spaces per unit in that instance, right?
Ours is 1.75.
Right. And so.
Look at how to figure that 3/4 of a car.
4 units, how do you do that?
And so in cottage clusters, they would still be able to apply for an earned parking reduction. If you did 2 spaces per unit, we would still maintain at that point an earned parking reduction with additional bicycle parking. At which point they would automatically be likely requesting a 15% across the board parking reduction for all of their parking demands. But there's been plenty of conversations with the planning commission, and I'm going to start wrapping this up because we have other things to talk about. But there's been lots of conversations at the planning commission level of why are we requiring triple the bicycle parking than the people that actually live there just to be able to have them reduce their parking spaces. So is that really a valid parking requirement at that point in exchange? And so then maybe at this point, what I hear is let's do the 2 spaces, but then we can study what a parking per bedroom count might look like.
I support that.
Yep.
Good enough?
Yep.
Let's move on to the next topic.
All right. Thanks,
She
Kelly.
loves talking parking with me.
All right. Sounds good. Thanks for facilitating that discussion. So moving on to our other recommended updates. So a lot of this should look familiar from our last meeting because we'd already teed up a lot of these recommendations based on the policy and code review. But to go back over it, we provided some updates for manufactured homes and prefabricated dwellings, which was another HPS item, a high priority HPS item. So these are updates that are largely intended to comply with state legislation for manufactured dwellings and dwelling parks. So part of what we had to do was update the city's use tables for each applicable zone to allow manufactured homes and prefabricated dwellings wherever single unit detached dwellings are allowed. We also updated the definition for single unit dwelling to include manufactured homes and prefabricated dwellings because the new state rules require all cities to allow manufactured homes and prefabricated dwellings to be sited on individual single family home lots. So in effect, they basically need to be treated the same as single family homes and allowed wherever single family homes are allowed. So just makes sense to kind of merge the definitions so they're all considered single family homes. We also added a definition for prefabricated dwelling to be consistent with the state's definition for prefabricated. And we have this graphic here in the picture to the right to kind of illustrate what a prefabricated dwelling is and how it's different from manufactured home. Essentially, prefabricated dwellings are kind of similar to like IKEA furniture. Their panels are manufactured off-site in a factory and assembled on-site, kind of in big panels like you see here on the right. So it's the idea being kind of more expedited construction process. But it's different from manufactured homes in that manufactured homes are kind of entirely manufactured offsite in a factory and transported to the site kind of as a whole package. Um, so we made some updates to remove specific manufactured dwelling placement standards that are more restrictive than development and design standards that would apply to single family. Um, so we just removed any of the standards that don't also apply to single family so that they all are essentially subject to the same development and design standards, with the exception of a few minor things. Um, so with all that said, we have a couple other discussion items to raise with you all. So some of the concerns that had been raised from the community regarding manufactured homes specifically being cited uh, on single family home lots was to community wanted to ensure that manufactured homes kind of have a similar design and feel to existing single family homes and existing single family home neighborhoods. So one of the concepts that we raised was requiring a minimum building width for manufactured homes, which would be a minimum width of 20 feet to help ensure that it's kind of a similar scale to a single family home. Alternatively, could provide an option to allow manufactured homes or single unit dwellings that are less than 20 feet wide. But in lieu of having that smaller building width, requiring certain design elements just to ensure that it still has the look and feel of a single family home. So yeah, just wanted to open this up to discussion, and Kelly, feel free to weigh in if you have any clarifying points on that.
This was pretty simple. Our old code made it pretty clear that the community had a desire to maintain a minimum requirement of at least the equivalent of a double wide manufactured home in the community when it's not in a manufactured home park. When we have to update our code to remove standards that are not specific to manufactured homes specifically, we would have to eliminate that standard. So this is us trying to identify, number one, I guess the question is, how much does the community care to maintain that standard? If it's not much, then we don't need to do anything. We could just remove it. But if you still want to maintain some level of standard, then the suggestion is to provide a minimum width, or in lieu of a minimum width, provide minimum development standards, and it could maintain both of them. But you can provide the either or standard option. So do we need to do this? And if we need to do it, are you okay with what the options are provided as?
Does this eliminate the tiny houses?
It does not eliminate tiny homes on wheels. It would eliminate single wide manufactured home trailers to be able to be placed in traditional residential neighborhoods without having specific design adornments to make sure they look and feel like a regular traditional neighborhood home is the goal of these types of standards.
You'll be glad to know I don't have a strong feeling either way on this one.
No strong feeling either way. Anybody else? So do we even need to do this would be question number one.
Well, I really like the minimum width.
Okay.
And I'll clarify that for the small lot single family, we recommended not requiring a minimum width for that new use type, just because it'd be a much smaller building and very likely be less than 20 feet. So requiring that minimum width might make it difficult to build that type.
Right.
And
Awning.
roof pitches, some sort of window articulation. Um, haven't gotten that far. We would probably steal from other cities' codes that already have similar design standards that are, number one, we don't want to go too crazy because we don't currently have design standards in our city, and we don't want to take away people's design rights of their own single-family homes. But we do want to ensure that we at least maintain a general character of a single-family neighborhood or a traditional single-unit dwelling. So,
So I guess my opinion is if we don't put some design standards to this, we may see a 1962 single wide move into a lot.
correct.
Putting my real estate hat on, you got to meet some design standards or you can't finance them. So I would hate to be creating non-financeable housing if our goal is to provide affordable housing. So my vote would be to do some kind of sideboard, some type of design standard, whether it be minimum width or not older than, something of that nature.
To
So I don't
clarify
think we can
on,
do not older than because it has to be unified across all housing, not just manufactured or prefab homes, but also stick-built. So I can't make people tear down their 1912 single-family stick-built homes. So it would have to be universal across all types of residential dwellings.
Okay, so for clarity, we're talking stick-built as well as manufactured.
It's universal across all single-unit dwelling types.
and to
So-
clarify on this manufactured homes and dwellings, the state only requires the city to allow manufactured homes on individual lots, and the definition for a manufactured home is, a factory-built dwelling built to HUD standards that was developed after I think 1976. So really old ones, like mobile homes that were built in the 60s or 50s, don't necessarily need to be allowed on single-family home lots. So that's the point being, it's more modern versions of manufactured dwellings need to be allowed on single-family home lots. And uh, as they are developed today, typically will have more design elements that are you would expect with a single-family home, such as window coverage and trims, awning, maybe a porch, things like that.
So with our 3 minutes left, what do we all think? So having some sort of sideboards?
Me too, 20 feet could be ugly, just as good as, just because it's 20 feet wide doesn't make it look good.
Okay. So we will put into, and we'll design some sort of sideboards together for this option. Moving
Okay.
forward, I know that we still have a couple of slides left. Brandon,
Yeah.
we'll just go through this really, really quickly. Basically, on manufactured dwelling parks, we're just going to update it to meet state code requirements. Next slide. Additional items that we're potentially going to be reviewing because we have additional opportunities with some funding are these additional code options for potential review based off of the available funds. So this would be what will be brought up potentially for the next round of code edits starting in January and February. And our next steps are to bring back any additional updates and revisions based off of the conversations today and the PAC meeting that we had last couple weeks ago. We'll have another PAC meeting in January. We'll bring forward final code revisions in spring with final adoption by May of everything. So we still have some work to do. You're going to have another set of other things to review with those other adoption concepts in the next round. But I think we're pretty well solidified with these options based off of your guys' comments. So thank you. Any questions for us? Dawn.
Yes, thank you for asking. Um, Several years ago, we reduced the lot size with the understanding, or the intent, I should say, of creating more affordable housing. What we didn't do was anticipate that a developer would come in and build up to get the square footage that he would have had on a bigger lot. So has the PAC considered putting a maximum square footage on a small lot?
That was one of the things that was considered. Um, what is currently being evaluated is lot size, maximum lot coverage, and then having a 25-foot maximum height really limits the buildup that you can do to limit the unit size that you can get out of it.
So for instance, the example that's on whatever, page 11, if you get creative, you could actually get 2,400 square foot out of that.
That doesn't include the area that you need to take out for the driveway required and the garage required to meet your 2 parking spaces. That's just giving you a general footprint area of the potential area that the lot coverage would authorize. So the unit count, the unit size would be smaller than that.
Okay, but I guess my point is, again, our goal is to create affordable housing as much as we possibly can.
Right.
So if we leave a loophole in there to build the same size house they would have anyway, that kind of defeats our purpose.
Understandable. I think that if you put in an artificial cap, it starts to limit the use of these tools. And it limits the viability of the product that you're trying to create. You ultimately are creating a housing opportunity, and having smaller lots will automatically create that smaller housing type that we're creating. You're not going to create these large McMansions, generally speaking, on these smaller lots. Are there opportunities for them to have some of them as those larger ones? Yes. But you also have 5,000 square foot lots that are developed now with single story homes that are 1,400 square feet as well, right? And so the market is going to dictate the type of product based off of the lot, based off of what the market needs, and based off of what the code will allow. And so the point is to provide opportunities, not to necessarily just fully pigeonhole it to a specific exacerbated amount that we're looking for. So we allow for lots of different opportunities, and the housing types have been built with those lots of different opportunities currently. And so the goal would be to create that opportunity still. We could further reduce it, and we could put in those artificial caps if we wanted to. We then get into the conversation of what that cap would look like. And I don't know what that would look like yet.
Okay, so just wanted to bring it up if it hasn't been discussed, but from past experience, just shrinking the lot didn't seem to help.
Is that it? Any other questions, comments? Alrighty. Right at 5:30, we're going to convene the regular, or the work session for the city council, but this meeting is adjourned.
Thank
Thanks
you,
all.
guys.
Thanks. Bye.
And is the consultants online?
She is.
Hi there.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. You guys ready for your update of
Yep.
the,
Yes, please.
all right, excellent. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to present this to you tonight. This is a big milestone in the project, getting closer to adoption, just about a month away. And so want to make sure we share the content of what's in the strategic plan. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And hopefully you all can see that.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Okay. So just a quick overview of what our presentation entails. We just want to make sure that for anybody watching or in the audience tonight, we reorient to the plan purpose, the goals, the process, the timeline. I believe my colleague Ashley shared last month an overview of the mission, vision, values, but we'll just touch briefly on those. They have not changed since you saw them last, so we'll just kind of reorient everyone to those and then take you through a more in-depth view of the strategic plan goals and actions. I think that's the piece that you haven't spent a lot of time with yet. And so we want to make sure you understand what's in the plan, because the next step will be to do some review of the plan with the council and the organization and make any necessary refinements and receive any feedback so that it's ready to, or make any needed adjustments so it's ready for you all to vote on adoption next month. We'll also talk about the implementation framework and then just our next steps in the process. So just reorienting you to the purpose of strategic plan is all about having those defined goals and actions that are going to help drive your vision forward in alignment with mission and values. And then it's about having the action plan for which to achieve those things. And the most important part of a strategic plan is the engagement that helps you get there. So from the council workshop that we conducted to the engagement that we did with staff, we hope that there's a lot of unity around what's been developed as part of this plan, and that it will align with the various plans that guide the work of the city going forward. We set out on this process with some goals. So we wanted to develop this 5-year comprehensive plan that includes council's vision and priorities, and also thinks about those major initiatives underway and in the pipeline for the city. Support the organization in developing a work plan. So we did some engagement, some focus groups with staff and developing the plan so that it aligns with the work that they're doing, and it feels like the actions truly are actionable and are things that they can carry forward and implement. And then through all of this engagement, building a cohesive team ready to move the goals forward. We started this process back in the spring and have taken our time in doing the engagement, making sure we get it right. And for the past couple months, we've been focused on making sure the development reflects everything that we heard. And now we're to our final phase of the project to get it reviewed, make sure that we heard everybody right, and that this does reflect all of that engagement, and then adopt it and get ready for implementation. Just some of those milestones along the way, we did the outreach with council and staff, identified the themes from the engagement. We did the focus groups, drafted the mission, vision, values, the action plan, the implementation structure, and now here we are at the end. As far as the strategic plan framework, so I'll take you through the goals and actions, but just a big picture how it's set up. You have the mission, which is the purpose of the organization, why the city organization exists, the vision, so your desired future state over the next 5 years. The values are the lens through which staff will work to implement these goals and actions. And the goal focus areas describe how you will advance the vision that you've defined. And then under that, the actions are the tactical pieces. So the actions describe how you'll advance each goal area. And as staff gets it further into the implementation process, they might be identifying specific projects or KPIs that go along with supporting those actions. So that's how the plan is organized. Mission and the vision. So as we mentioned, this states the purpose and your desired future state. You guys have seen these before, but for anybody that might be viewing for the first time, the mission, we provide services that foster a resilient, safe, and growing community strengthened by our community connections. And the vision, the desired future state, we're a thriving community investing in essential services that support a livable and sustainable future for all. Those values include collaboration, innovation, connection, support, and accountability. And then the goal areas. So the plan is organized into 5 goal areas, and we'll go through each one. And I welcome any questions as we move through these. So that would make sure everybody's on the same page and you understand what's in the plan. So the first one is transportation and infrastructure. And these are organized with staff. We worked with identifying what's the outcome based on what we heard from the council and the engagement themes we heard from staff. And so the outcomes are defined, and then the actions that will support those outcomes are listed underneath. So the first one under transportation and infrastructure is to be able to support future growth. Some of the actions listed there include upgrading the wastewater treatment plant, participating in the Cascades West Regional Consortium to advocate for wetlands reform, investigate the feasibility of developing a locally owned wetland mitigation bank to create credits to stimulate industrial development for recruitment opportunities. So some of these actions around wetlands is it's been identified that those take up a significant portion of any land available in Lebanon. And so are there ways to make those lands available for development opportunities? And then 1.4 is update the transportation plan for links and evaluate the expansion of the deviated fixed route. Next outcome here is around continue to provide clean water. So increase small water line replacements, construct pretreatment facilities for the water treatment plant where necessary, loop dead end water lines. And these were all actions that, again, and really informed by staff of just the areas where they know that in order to continue to provide clean water, these are things that can be taken care of. The last outcome in this goal area is to maintain sustainable operations of infrastructure. So conduct advocacy and lobbying for state funding and policy reform, identify and pursue grant opportunities, develop a dedicated building maintenance fund. So how are we going to save for that continued ongoing maintenance exists? And then incorporate infrastructure master plan and replacement projects into GIS to visually be able to better identify how to prioritize projects. And last is to evaluate options for distribution and collections funding. So at this point, I just want to pause and see if there are any questions about any of the actions there in our first goal area of transportation and infrastructure.
No, I do not believe there is.
Okay, we'll keep going then. The next one is the goal area community services and cultural opportunities. The outcome listed here is to preserve quality services. So that includes the library, senior center, parks, and recreation. First action is to update the volunteer policy to streamline the process and enhance the service experience for volunteers. The second one, improve and implement facility use process and fees. So how folks in the community engage with your facilities and the fees for which they do that. Update your Parks and Recreation Master Plan and continue to review and pursue grant funding opportunities. Any questions in this goal area?
No, there is not.
All right, next step, we've got financial sustainability and economy. The outcome is to create general fund sustainability, and the actions identified here, this one was a large area, explore the sunset of the urban renewal area, implement a city services fee, develop and deliver communication tools to help inform the community on the city's financial position and the funding options to maintain the existing service levels. Conduct an organizational assessment to identify efficiencies and opportunities for process improvement. So kind of one focused on how do we tighten our service areas to be as efficient as we can. Explore partnerships and special district opportunities for parks, recreation, library, and the senior center. Examine and evaluate opportunities for public safety partnerships. Explore the service fee to support city services for higher education organizations. Explore city facilities and evaluate opportunities for best service delivery. Expand upon the park sponsorship program for park maintenance, and evaluate solar as an opportunity to offset costs or generate revenue. And the second outcome here for this one is economic responsiveness and revitalization. So few actions here: respond to business Oregon recruitments based on your site availability, develop a strategy for the redevelopment and reuse of the Champion Mill brownfield site, develop a strategy for the revitalization of Highway 20 commercial corridor between Oak Street and Airport Road, develop a strategy to revitalize the downtown zone to address vacant properties and capitalize on proximity to the location of Comp Northwest campus. And then last, continue the business visitation program and implement actions based on the input that you all received from that. This one had quite a few actions in it. Any questions on any of those?
No, there isn't. Please continue.
Okay, you got it. Goal 4, community safety. The first outcome, increase communication, collaboration across the organization and with your community partners. So that is the first action there, increasing the communication and collaboration across departments and with outside agencies to improve safety and efficiencies. Reorganization and participation in the safety committee. Develop and conduct emergency management training and update your emergency operations plan. For crime prevention, evaluate the feasibility of reopening the municipal jail, increase staffing for the traffic team and reserve and cadet program, and then expand existing crime prevention programs, community crime prevention programs. And last in that one, enhance communication with the business community and city departments on safety concerns to improve crime prevention there. And then last in this area is to connect the appropriate resource with the community needs. So continue partnership with the mobile crisis unit and continue to support and connect with nonprofit organizations to bring homeless services to Lebanon. Any questions on community safety?
No, there is not. Thank you.
Okay, last one then. Goal 5 is engagement and connection. The outcome here is to build trust through transparent communications and engagement, wanting to achieve a well-informed community or support a well-informed community. And first one is to develop an external communication strategy, implement consistent branding guidelines, establish a communications committee to coordinate and collaborate on consistent communications and strategy, and then collaborate with community partners. The second one for engagement and connection is organization stability. So coordinate consistent internal communication tools for two-way communication between the administration and staff, redesign the employee recognition program, develop a succession planning policy and plan, enhance employee training and development, complete business continuity planning, and then align staffing and resources with city and department needs. So those ones are very internally focused. Any questions there?
No.
Additional contact? Okay.
It's a very exciting night, I know.
It's all good. Just want to make sure that we're moving ahead. Okay. I want everybody to move ahead on the same page. No surprises. Implementation system. So what the plan says as far as how you'll keep this a living plan and help to foster a strategic or a culture of strategic management is you want to make sure that we have two-way communication with the council and organization regarding updates, challenges, opportunities, and progress. So we want to make sure that the plan goals and actions continue to stay relevant. So regular progress updates will help give you the information that you need to make any additional updates on an annual basis. We also want to make sure in this implementation that we sustain engagement and support for the plan by just continuing regular communication and dealing with any emerging issues. And then the last goal here, we want to foster accountability for implementation across the organization. So this isn't just one department leading it. It's everybody's involved, all hands on deck to try and move this work forward. And then also maintaining transparency with the community. So as far as the leadership team will prioritize the actions and develop timelines and assign the project leads for implementation. And then the city will integrate these actions into the budget development process. So going into this process, we talked about early on, the idea is that this is going to align with your budget. And so each year the council will get a chance to receive progress updates on the goals, make any adjustments that they feel like need to be made based on whatever's currently happening in the community. And then your city staff will use that information and the input you provide to develop the budget from there. So that project lead, this is a staff person taking one of the actions and moving it forward. And so they do things like put together the project team, figure out the project timeline, who's involved, what are the key milestones. They'll also work on developing key indicators. So how are we going to measure progress and track it so that we can report back to the council and the community. They'll also be responsible for engaging, updating the council, boards, commissions, the organization, the community where appropriate, and reporting any progress, challenges, or opportunities, and recommending any updates that need to be made to the council as it gets towards the end. Council, your role, very important. You'll receive all of the updates on the plan progress, and annually we'll approve any updates that come forward. And continue to serve as champions for the plan, sharing updates with the community. And then as you're having community conversations, be gathering that input to inform future updates. So always being mindful of what's the context, what's happening in the community, and how might we think of, or how might we take that input and when we do our update of the plan each year. And then city staff, just in general, is to be familiar with the mission, the vision, the values, the goals, and serve on project teams for specific actions where appropriate, and stay in tune with the progress reports, and then share input on the overall plan and suggestions for updates as well. So the structure, what you can expect going forward after the plan's been approved, is every 6 months, there'll be a progress report to the council, and that will also be shared with the community. So anything that's been achieved, any barriers or challenges that have been run into, or maybe new opportunities that have come up that might influence the actions, those will all be shared on a regular basis. Every year, as I mentioned, the council will have a chance to update the plan. And so staff will be recommending updates that they've encountered, or potential updates they've encountered throughout the year, and bring those to you for discussion. And then every 5 years, it's recommended to do a comprehensive update to the plan. So you'll be checking off hopefully a lot of these boxes, and it is intended that these things will be completed and not continuously ongoing. It's not a comprehensive plan, it's a strategic plan where you should be making annual progress on things. And so every 5 years, doing some engagement with the community, the council, the staff, and then taking a look at the mission, vision, values, and refining the goals and actions as needed. So again, it's meant to be very much a living document and help to foster that culture of strategic management. So as far as the next steps to bring this home and wrap it all up, we want to, there'll be a survey link that will go out to just a few questions where you can share any input. Council and staff can give feedback, and that will be available until November 25th. We'll incorporate any of the edits and get your final draft put together, and it'll come back to the council on December 11th for adoption. And then the implementation begins. And in some instances may already be underway on some of the actions that staff have included on the plan. But from there, they'll be working on developing those indicators and figuring out how they're going to measure progress and stay accountable to the plan so they can bring you all the great updates that happen. So with that, I just want to see if there are any other questions, discussion. comments before we launch into these next steps?
No comments, no questions? Yeah, it is pretty straightforward. Thank you for helping us through this process. Um, and yeah, as you were going through it, I was like, this is exactly what we were looking for. So
Good,
I'm pretty happy with it myself. So.
good,
Now we just gotta
excellent.
do it.
Well,
So
yeah, now you
there's
get to
no other,
work.
yeah, if there's no other questions or comments, Sarah, thank you so much for your presentation. And we will adjourn this work session.
All right, you're
Thank you.
welcome. Have a good night.
Michelle, how much different would your life be right now? I think about you when I see this.
Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the flag salute.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the city recorder please call roll?
Mayor Jacola,
Present.
Council President Steinhebel. Here. Councilor Dykstra,
Here.
Councilor Mann,
Here.
Councilor Savage, Councilor Olfers,
Here.
Councilor Workman.
Here.
All righty, thank you. We'll move on to consent calendar. The following items are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will not be a separate discussion for these items unless the councilor so requests. In this case, items will be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. Agenda, Lebanon City Council Agenda, November 13th, 2024. Agreement irrevocable. Petition for future street improvements, West Sherman Street. Appointments, Planning Commission, Regina Thompson. Board meetings, June 26, 2024, and September 18, 2024, Planning Commission, June 26, 2024, Senior and Disabled Service Advisory Committee. Council meetings, September 11, 2024, City Council meeting amended. October 9th, 2024, City Council meeting. October 10th, 2024, City Council Town Hall. October 15th, 2024, City Council Town Hall. October 23rd, 2024, City Council Special Meeting. Easement for Wellwood Storage. And ordinance number 3027, ordinance bill number 2024-11, a bill for a ordinance amending the Lebanon Municipal Code, Title 13, Public Service by deleting chapters 13.25, 120, discount for low-income senior citizens and disabled. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion's been made to approve. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. No presentations tonight, so we'll move on to public comments. Citizens may address the council by filling out a testimony card prior to speaking and handed to the city recorder. Each citizen is provided up to 5 minutes to provide comment to the council. The council may take additional 2 minutes to ask clarifying questions. The city recorder will accept and distribute written comments at speaker's request. We only have one tonight. It's the LDA, Shelley Jackala.
Sorry.
We think he pronounced your
A
name
little
wrong.
louder next time, city attorney.
Oh, he pronounced my name wrong. I know. No. Okay, so the update is we've had our downtown trick or treat in the 5K, which last year we had 7 people, I think, for the 5K. This year we had over 60. So there was a huge improvement from last year, and the downtown trick or treat what I have never seen so many people down there. So it was, I think we had well over 2,500 people that came down and enjoyed all the festivities that we had, and a lot of the surrounding businesses came down and participated with the downtown. So it was a really good afternoon for the kids. We have now started our Shop Small initiative for the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and we are working with American Express, and they're sending us promotional things to hand out and to advertise for the Shop Small in downtown. We had, on Friday, we had a workshop for the downtown businesses, but we also extended it to anyone in Lebanon that wanted to come down, and it was through Oregon Main Street. And they had a gentleman come down to teach a workshop on maximizing your online presence. And it was a great workshop. We had a really good turnout for that and learned a lot of stuff that had no idea about getting out there on the internet. Uh, We're now getting ready for the holiday seasons. For December, we are having a window contest, an ugly sweater contest. On the first Friday, we're doing, all the merchants will do their favorite holiday treats and hand them out. We're gonna do letters to Santa and have Santa down there and Mrs. Claus and some elves and some Christmas carolers. And then that will go into, the next day will be the tree lighting and the parade, and also the downtown historic tour. We're working with Build Lebanon Trails and the museum to get that tour going. So that will also be on Saturday at 2:00. The downtown restoration grant is open now through Oregon Parks and Recs, and it is up to $400,000. And we have 4 different building owners right now that are expressing an interest in applying for that grant. So we'll be working on that. And actually, the Economic Vitality Committee, we just met today, and we are starting on our website and been reaching out to the business owner or building owners that have vacant spaces to get that on our website. So if somebody's looking to come into downtown, we'll have all the information for them about the different available buildings that are down there. So that's all I got for you. Questions?
Does the $400,000 grant, does that go to one thing or can it be used
You know,
different?
I know in Albany, they did 2 1 year. Well, it was always $200,000, and they just, because it's through the lottery dollars, and I think it was usually $5 million, and they got $10 million. So they've upped it to 400,000 and doubled the grant because building supplies and stuff are so much more expensive than they were, 5 years ago.
But
So,
can just one business use it, or can like 3 different people get
Well-
a piece of it, so to speak?
Albany got 2 separate grants one year. So it would have been 2 $400,000 grants. Lebanon, we've applied for it, and it was a $200,000 grant, and we had 2 different owners get $100,000 apiece.
I got you.
So the board will, because the Downtown Association actually has to apply for this grant. It's not the building owner on their own. So they have to present it to us, and then the board will decide which project they think will be the most successful at getting the grant, and then how they're going to do it. And we could submit 2 applications as well. So, we'll talk with the Oregon Parks and Recs and see, if they have a bunch of applications, then we'll want to, get the most that we can. But if they have a few, maybe we can do 2 separate. So we'll
Gotcha.
see
Thanks.
as it gets closer.
Any other questions or comments? All righty, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll move on to the first public hearing, ordinance bill number 2024-10, ordinance number 3026. Public hearing is now open at 6:08. Will the city attorney please present your staff report? You don't need to say anything, do you?
That's why I was looking at which one we were on, so no.
No.
Public hearing? Okay. With that, yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and city councilors. So over the last year, staff and city council worked together to find solutions to correct the general fund deficit. As you know, we've had multiple work sessions. In April of this year, city council identified implementing a city services fee as one option, and we started down that path. This is in conjunction with city staff reduction of 9.75 full-time equivalent positions, along with some additional materials and services reductions in order to meet that goal of closing the gap on the structural deficit. As part of the process of implementing the service fees, we had 2 town hall meetings, which were attended by about 40 individuals at each town hall meeting. We've dedicated a webpage to this as far as what, why, and how we're going to implement it, and what the whys are, why we're in the position we are. We've gone through all that process. So with that, on the 23rd of October, we had another special session where we discussed this, discussed the ordinance, the draft ordinance. There was no real changes to that ordinance. what we have before you tonight is an ordinance to create section 3.24 of the city municipal code for a city services fee. And with that, I'm able to answer any questions.
No questions from council to staff. Is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of this matter? Is there anyone who'd like to speak in opposition? Public hearing is hereby closed at 6:10. All further discussions will be limited to council and staff at this time. Does council have any discussion points?
I think we're covered on this.
I think we've done it. I think we've done the due diligence on this pretty.
I'm just really glad that we decided to do those town halls. I think we had a lot of good feedback from those, and I think it was important for us to do that, so.
Okay. Will the city attorney please read the title of the ordinance?
Ordinance Bill number 2024-10, ordinance number 3026, a bill for an ordinance creating section 3.24 city services fee to the Lebanon Municipal Code.
Is there a motion?
Move
I
to
move.
approve.
Second.
Motion's been made to approve. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Move on to the next public hearing, resolution number 2024-27. Public hearing is now open at 6:11. Again, city manager.
Thank you again, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Also, during the October 23rd City Council special session, we discussed the rate to set this at, to set the service fee at. After several iterations, we landed on $18 a month for that rate for a single-family residence, or actually single-family doors, residence, whatever you'd like to call it. Council agreed that that was an acceptable number at this time. That closes the structural deficit based on our 5-year projections. We'll continue to manage those 5-year projections. The goal of this would be to come back each year when we do our utility rate discussion and have the same discussion as part of the budget process each year, and go forward with that. So with that, I recommend the approval of the attached resolution setting the rates for the city services fee, and am able to answer any questions.
With the exception of my neighbor who wants to pay $25, remember?
We can
Get that address.
Yeah,
get that address.
yeah.
Any other questions from council? All right. Is there anybody who would like to speak in favor of this matter? Is there anybody who'd like to speak in opposition? Public hearing is hereby closed at 6:12. All further discussion will be limited to council and staff at this time. Is there any discussion to be had?
The one thing I will say, implementation, so should this, which the ordinance has been passed, it's 30 days after. So first bill, Brandon, correct me if I'm right, would show up in the end of January? Is half of it, yes. Half of it would end up in January for that first bill. We're working through the process of getting all this input into our Springbrook system. So there's going to be some bumps. We know that. We're well aware of that. It's pretty daunting to get through that. So we're well aware of those, and we're willing to work with people if there's changes, challenges, whatever that is. So just keep that in mind if you hear from constituents that, you know, hey, my bill got wrong, we'll make it right, but there will be some of those that happen. Brandon has one other item of interest.
I should fix that. So 30 days from this point would actually mean that it would take effect in time for our December 19th bill as the kickoff for that. So folks would see this December 19th to January 18th, so a full round at the end of January. I said
So it'll be the
half, and
full
I should have
18
said
on the bill
full
for
18
January.
at the end of January.
Thanks for the clarification.
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you.
Will the city attorney please read the title of the resolution?
Resolution number 2024-27, resolution setting rates for City of Lebanon's services fee.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
I
Move
so
for
move.
approval.
Motion's been made to approve. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes. Move on to ordinance bill, next public hearing, ordinance bill number 2024-12, ordinance number 3028. Public hearing is now open at 6:15. City Attorney, please read the hearing procedures.
Tonight's hearing will be pursuant to the quasi judicial procedures set out in 197.797 at the start of each hearing. Council members will be asked to disclose any ex parte communications, conflict of interest, or bias. The applicable substantive criteria for this hearing will be addressed in the staff report to council. Testimony may be in oral or written form, but must be directed towards the criteria outlined in the staff report, the comprehensive plan, or the city's land use regulations. Any issue raised must be accompanied by statements and evidence sufficient to allow the council and party members an opportunity to respond. Please note that failure to raise an issue, including constitutional issues, by the close of the hearing will prevent an appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals.
Thank you. Do any councilors wish to declare ex parte contact, conflict, or bias? Is there anybody in the audience that objects to the notice that was sent in this case or to the jurisdiction of this body to hear or consider this case? Director Hart, can you give your staff report?
Absolutely. Good evening. Before you tonight is a proposed annexation of a 0.46 acre property on the north side of Airport Road, west of Strawberry Lane. The address is 1021 West Airport Road. The property is located within the city's urban growth boundary, and it is contiguous to the city limits on the southern property line. And the property is designated within the city's comprehensive plan as residential mixed density. And the applicant has accepted the initial zoning upon annexation as residential mixed density, which is the only zoning designation authorized without amendment upon annexation. And so as it is accepting the initial zoning, no additional analysis of the city's facility plans is required. There are existing utilities within Airport Road that upon annexation, the property would be able to connect to be served with. And so as the property is contiguous to city boundary lines, the applicant is accepting of the initial zoning and it can be served by city utilities. The application meets the criteria for annexation, and at the October 16th Planning Commission meeting, Planning Commission reviewed the criteria, determined it to meet all the criteria identified, and as fully described in the staff report provided, and unanimously recommended the city council approve the annexation. So that concludes my report.
Alrighty, thank you. Does council have any questions? At this time, I'd ask the applicant for testimony. Okay. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in favor of the annexation? Anybody that would like to speak in opposition? The public hearing is hereby closed at 6:18. All further discussions will be limited to council and staff at this time. Is there any discussion to be had?
Nope.
Okay. Will the city attorney please read the title of the ordinance?
Ordinance Bill number 2024-12, ordinance number 3028, a bill for an ordinance annexing and zoning property following consent filed with city council by landowners in said area pursuant to ORS 222.120 and 222.170, file A24-03.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion's been made to approve. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, moving on to ordinance bill 2024-13, ordinance number 3029. Public hearing is now open at 6:19. City attorney, please read the hearing procedures.
Tonight's hearing will be under the same provisions previously read. However, prior to each hearing, need to read this part. Testimony may be in oral or written form, but must be directed towards the criteria outlined in the staff report, the comprehensive plan of the city's land use regulations. Any issue raised must be accompanied by statements and evidence sufficient to allow the council and party members an opportunity to respond. Please note that failure to raise an issue, including a constitutional issue, by the close of the hearing will prevent any appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals.
Alrighty, thank you. Do any counselors wish to declare ex parte contact, conflict, or bias? Is there anybody in the audience that would like to object to the notice that was sent in this case or to the jurisdiction of this body to hear or consider this case? Again, Director Hart.
Again, before you is an annexation for a property that is 0.2 acres in size on the northeast corner of Russell Drive and Mill Street. The property address is 2187 Mill Street. Property is contiguous to city boundaries on the southern property line and is designated as mixed use in the city's comprehensive plan, and the zoning upon annexation would be mixed use. The applicant has accepted the initial zoning, therefore no additional evaluation of the facility plans are required. There is existing utilities located within Russell Drive and can be extended north in Mill Street upon annexation and any future development. And so therefore, as the property is contiguous to city boundaries, the applicant is accepting of the initial zoning upon annexation, and it can be served by facilities. It is eligible for annexation. Planning Commission held a public hearing on October 16th and unanimously recommended to approve the annexation, subject to the criteria identified in the staff report, which has been provided to the City Council. That concludes this report.
Alrighty, thank you. Does the council have any questions? At this time, would the applicant like to give testimony?
Rachel Adamek, the Real Property Program Manager for Lynn County. I don't have any additional testimony. I'm just here in case y'all had any questions.
I have a question. I understand that tax foreclosure sales are currently kind of in a standstill mode. Has there been any movement from the county or state as it relates to, and this was as a result of a Supreme Court decision? Are they moving forward? Is there anything in place to do the sales, or what's the current status?
At this point, sales are not on hold. We can't take possession of any new foreclosures until the legislature comes up with the new ORSs for us to follow. So that's being worked on, and we hope to have something in the next session.
So it does or doesn't apply to this one?
It does not. We took deed of this prior to that taking effect.
Got it.
So,
Okay.
And we could sell it before the legislature does anything. It's a pause on taking deed of property, not on the sale of property.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions? Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody that would like to speak in favor of this annexation? Is there anybody who would like to speak in opposition? This public hearing is hereby closed at 6:23. All further discussion will be limited to council and staff this time. Is there any discussion to be had? Okay. City Attorney, please read the title of the ordinance.
Ordinance Bill number 2024-13, ordinance number 3029, bill for an ordinance annexing and zoning property following consent filed with the City Council by landowners in said area pursuant to ORS 222.120 and ORS 222.170, file 824-04, Lynn County.
Alrighty, is there a motion?
Move to approve. I'll second it.
Motion's been made to approve. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion passes. I'd like to thank Lynn County for helping us get this, a resolution to this. It's been a long time coming. Thank you. Moving on to the next public hearing, ordinance bill 2024-14, ordinance number 3030. Public hearing is now open at 6:24. Will the city attorney please read hearing procedures?
Testimony may be in oral or written form, but must be directed towards the criteria outlined in the staff report, the comprehensive plan of the city's land use regulations. Any issues raised must be accompanied by statements and evidence sufficient enough to allow the council and party members an opportunity to respond. Please note the failure to raise an issue, including a constitutional issue, by the close of the hearing will prevent any appeal to the Land Use Board of Appeals.
Thank you. Do any councilors wish to declare ex parte contact, conflict, or bias? Is there anybody in the audience that would, or is there anybody in the audience that objects to the notice that was sent in this case or to the jurisdiction of this body to hear or consider this case? Again, Director Hart.
One more time, before using annexation for an even smaller property at 0.17 acres in size on the north side of Airport Road, east of Primrose. The property is at, sorry, this is south of Airport Road, east of Primrose, staff report error. It is, the subject property is 140 Russell Drive. The property is contiguous to city boundaries on the eastern or northern property lines, and it is designated residential mixed density in the comprehensive plan. And upon annexation, the applicant would be accepting the zoning of residential mixed density, and there is already city utilities in Russell Drive available for annexation, available for connection upon annexation. And so as it is contiguous to city boundaries, accepting of initial zoning, and eligible for connecting to city facilities, it meets the criteria for annexation. And the Planning Commission made the recommendation to approve the annexation at their October 16th meeting to the City Council. And so that concludes my report.
All righty, thank you. Does the council have any questions? Okay, is there, would the applicant like to give testimony? Is there anyone that would like to speak in favor of the annexation? Anybody who would like to speak in opposition? Public hearing is hereby closed at 6:27. All further discussion limited to council staff at this time. Is there any discussion to be had?
Deja vu.
Yeah. City Attorney, please read the title of the ordinance.
Ordinance Bill number 2024-14, ordinance number 3030, a bill for an ordinance annexing and zoning property following consent filed with the City Council by a landowner in said area pursuant to ORS 222.120 and ORS 222.170, file A24-05.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion been made to approve. It's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. We'll go into the regular session now. Resolution number 2024-8 or 28. Resolution authorizing the City of Lebanon to adopt a low-income rate, utility rate relief policy. Finance Director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Before you is a memo and a, what do we do? Resolution to establish a policy for a low-income discount rate. One of the items that you processed earlier this evening was an ordinance to amend the city code, pulling the existing low-income discount rate out of the storm drainage section of our code, which is the only place in which it resided. That policy at that point set a 10% discount for seniors and low income. What we are proposing at this time is to create this resolution, essentially policy by resolution. It's something that then we can come back through as at council's desire to amend in the future just by a resolution, not a full code update. And then we are also proposing at this time to move that 10% up to 30%. Sorry, I had to double check. In reviewing options for this, one of the things that we discovered is there are several Oregon cities that have discount ranges, figures ranging anywhere between 30 and 50%. So our 10% figure is very low compared to those around us, and really doesn't do in staff opinion, doesn't do a whole lot as far as any sort of discount for those who really could use that discount. While it may have been a step in the right direction, it wasn't necessarily enough to mitigate any financial hardship. And there's a pretty lengthy process to go through in order to qualify for that discount, specifically an application process through a third-party organization, that we don't think that, it may have been a deterrent for many who either couldn't get there to do the application, or that 10% just wasn't worth the time and energy. So at this time, we have that resolution before you, moving that to 30% and establishing that for all of our utilities on a universal basis, as well as the newly adopted city services fee. I can answer any questions if you have them.
I have a question. It says shall apply to the water, wastewater, storm drainage, and city services fees. So is it only the fees that are applied with it, or is the overall bill?
We would apply it universally to the overall bill. So what we would do is establish it to each of the individual utilities on the bill. So they would see that lower rate for each of their utilities as they're reviewing their bill. Does that make sense?
So if their bill is like $150, it's 30% off of the entire bill?
Correct.
Okay.
So it'll zero out, basically, the utility tax.
The
In
city
some
services
cases,
fee.
City services fee, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Whatever you want to call it.
in some cases, yes, the new 30% discount certainly will offset what the city service fee is that's being imposed. So some folks may not notice that difference if they have the existing income discount.
Good.
Can you ballpark the average bill for me, the utilities bill?
Our average utility bill, I think, is in the $125 range currently. So you're talking probably.
Wish my bill was that low. Just saying.
Seasonally.
Continue.
mine's a little-
So if you added 18 to that, so somewhere around 142, 143, if you took 30% of that.
Yeah, 37.50.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dollar difference.
So if an average bill currently is $125, you're adding an $18 fee, that makes it about $143. The discount would bring that down to $100.10. Rough
Okay,
math.
thank you.
My average is 112.
Any other questions of staff? No? Okay, will the city attorney please read the title of the resolution again?
Resolution, did I read it before?
No, I read it before.
Resolution number 2024-28, a resolution authorizing the city of Lebanon to adopt a low-income utility rate relief policy.
Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion's been made to approve, it's been seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Kelly. You're
Thank
not
you all.
done. New FEMA limitations on development in the floodplain. We are just working you tonight, aren't we?
Huh?
Driller.
Please.
Making those big bucks now.
Okay. So, I'm gonna try to make this as simple as possible. FEMA got sued because our National Floodplain Insurance Program, which allows for properties that have development in the floodplain, can actually get insurance in the floodplain. That program did not efficiently and appropriately evaluate the Endangered Species Act. So FEMA got sued. And then FEMA needed to do stuff and FEMA didn't do stuff. And so now we're in a situation where FEMA has gotten sued again, and now FEMA is making us do stuff. It's about as simple as I can possibly make why we're here and what we're doing right now. So to comply with these lawsuits, and for FEMA to comply with the Endangered Species Act, associated with our National Floodplain Insurance Program, and for the city to be able to keep being part of that program, we need to participate in this pre-implementation compliance measures conversation. So FEMA has basically said, hey, these are some options in front of cities for you to consider. There is the special flood hazard area known as the 100-year floodplain area. And in that area, we need to take special considerations of endangered species and their habitat. So we're going to give you 3 options for consideration. Cities by December 1st, and they notified us this on July 15th of this year. And this is brand new information and brand new stuff for us to figure out. So it took quite a bit of time for us to figure out what we were doing. By December 1st, you need to tell us what you want to do. And then by July 1st of next year, you need to actually start implementing it. So that's all the background. I kept it on the pretty slide because it was prettier. Where we're at in terms of our actual city's context of the floodplain so that you guys can understand where our staff recommendations are coming from. We have almost 6,300-ish properties in the city of Lebanon currently. Only almost 250-ish properties actually are within this special hazard floodplain area that have the 100-year floodplain. Now, that being said, the vast majority of those properties are actually along the Albany Canal, which means they're actually already developed, and they're mostly vastly developed outside of the floodplain area. So although your property has the floodplain on it, you can still develop on it, you just are developing outside of the floodplain, or previously you can develop on it with a floodplain permit. And so realistically, a lot of the properties are already developed. And so anything that would happen associated with this are associated with redevelopment of those properties, or you're looking at these larger tracts of land that are on the outskirts of city that you can kind of see on the southwest. That would be new development. So like I said, the vast majority is already developed. And what we are seeing is those properties that are new development, even without this new regulation, they're already naturally choosing to try to develop outside of the floodplain already. And when they are hitting the floodplain, they're minimizing it as much as they possibly can. So with that context, I'm going to go through what the 3 options are. And I want to be clear, because FEMA has been sued, the biggest problem is Oregon itself is lovely and wonky in its legislative and its rulemaking processes. This has not been developed to necessarily fit in Oregon's land use regulatory systems. So we're trying to fit sort of a square peg in a round hole situation as it sits right now, because we were starting to go through the Oregon rulemaking process and we were going lockstep with FEMA. And then we kind of had to fall out of that because of these additional lawsuits. So the 3 options that we have in front of us right now are, number 1, we can just straight out put a moratorium on or prohibit any development within the 100-year floodplain. Totally an option. However, per Oregon, that really doesn't quite fit in our land use system. What that would require our city to do is, number 1, issue a Measure 56 notification, which says that as a city, we are actively going to be implementing an ordinance that is going to impact your right to develop on your property. And then that also results in potential Measure 49 claims, which says that you are restricting our ability to use our property, which results in a taking and their ability to get recouped costs of their property, right? So it doesn't quite work within our system, and for how much we're actually being impacted by it, just automatically staff doesn't actually recommend us moving forward with this option. Option number 2 is a model ordinance, which FEMA says it's ready to go. But realistically, we haven't even seen the final draft of it yet. And it is incredibly cumbersome. Just by context right now, for our floodplain overlay code, it's about 22 pages just for the floodplain itself. And that's just for the overlay. This model code, from what I've seen so far, would add an additional probably 30 pages on top of that. And it is incredibly cumbersome and technical. And I myself am the floodplain manager for your city. I am not an expert, and this is going to require me to become an expert. So it's going to be incredibly onerous in terms of, number one, implementing the model ordinance to make sure that it melds in within our code. And there's going to be consistencies within our code of how it is going to work. And then two, the staff time to actually be able to learn how to implement it. So on top of that, with the way that some of the model code is written, there is still some of that additional implications that there's some takings claims in it that could potentially occur. So just by the general basis of how much we have going on in our city in the floodplain, for context, in the last 5.5 years that I've been here, we've processed 3 floodplain permits. One of them has been the city of Lebanon's floodplain permit, when we literally put a pipe in the ground for the West Side Interceptor and covered it back up. So 2 out of the 3 have been private permits. 1 has been ours. But 3 permits in 5 years, the model ordinance starts to become a bit onerous in terms of our application of it. But it is something that the city could take on, which would then make a uniform application for property owners to then end up having to apply. And then they meet the National Floodplain Insurance Program requirements. We could choose to do that. That is then an additional 7 months of work for us to figure out what that ordinance looks like, and we have to implement it by July 1st of next year. The third option is the permit by permit option. Now, full disclosure, this is the most onerous on private property owners who want to develop property within the 100-year floodplain. If they don't develop in the 100-year floodplain, if they have property that's within the 100-year floodplain, but they develop outside of the floodplain, they don't have to do anything. But if they choose to try to develop something that's in the floodplain, then they do have an onus on them as part of this permit by permit process that they would have to do the equivalent of a habitat assessment, hiring a biologist to determine that they're creating a no net loss situation where their development is not impacting endangered species habitat or actual species themselves. It removes any takings liability because they're demonstrating that they're not going to create the loss, and so therefore they will be able to then be able to develop. It removes the staff training and the staff time in terms of the model ordinance side of the equation. It removes the work associated with the model ordinance side of the equations. And it would be processed internally when we do receive these permit by permits. It would be processed similarly to what we already do on the other technical things that we do, like the traffic impact analyses when we have larger developments and we have to analyze, vehicle traffic counts and impacts and mitigation options for whether or not you're triggering a traffic signal or something like that. Offsite measures. We have private property owners and developers contract with a consultant to analyze and study that. And then we contract with a consultant to review that and pass through the cost of the review of that study to the private owner to ensure that the study is reviewed appropriately by the people who actually are educated in that field. So we would be doing a similar process in this permit by permit process. And so just by the nature of it, for my sanity, for the city's costs of stuff, for not creating takings claims, and for fitting the best in our systems and the Oregon's land use systems. Right now, we would recommend the permit by permit system to meet the December 1st deadline. That would be our recommendation. FEMA does specifically say you can at any point in time change your mind and do something else, but you have to do something. And so where we sit today, our do something would be, our recommendation at the staff level is the permit by permit. So with that, I am happy to answer any questions as much as I possibly can on this topic. And I'll conclude my report.
Well, the pre-made FEMA thing is out for me just by saying it's pre-made by FEMA. It might not sound right, but I don't know really what would happen if we just adopted a moratorium? What would we have to do and what would it cause?
If we adopted a moratorium to say that we're not going to allow any development to occur. So Trey, I might need your help on this.
You know, my head's turned in the thinking direction.
Kind of like a puppy.
We didn't notice
Yeah.
the switch.
So
That creates a taking
what
situation.
other cities have identified that they have done is that they have ended up issuing direct notices to every single property within the floodplain, a Measure 56 notice that says we are adopting a moratorium or a prohibition of development in the floodplain. So therefore, we are actively taking this action to prohibit activity on your property. And that meets state law requirements. And so other cities have taken that action. And then it has been like an ordinance.
If a corner of my backyard happens to be sitting, I'd get a notice saying, hey, you can't do anything in that corner of your back. Is it that specific?
Well, so we don't sit there and look and evaluate at your property specifically, but we have that overlay map. We have that map that has listed out every single property, right? And so we have the addresses.
But there are
and
houses
so then
there
we
with-
send the notice that say your property has property within the floodplain.
Yep.
We are actively prohibiting development within the
Yes.
floodplain.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
So therefore, here's the Measure 56 notification that says you cannot develop in the floodplain. At which point, if somebody chooses so, they could potentially issue a Measure 49 claim saying that we are prohibiting them from their rights to develop. And it is untested. I can guarantee you there are pending lawsuits on the horizon. The city has to determine whether or not they want to be part of that game or not.
Yeah, I'm all for the permit one. I just didn't know what the ramifications of the first one.
It strikes me that there's no real good answer on this.
Yeah.
There's none.
You've got, but option 3 is the least onerous on the city
Yes.
and the less likely to open up claims of takings or what have you against the city. So, and we can always revisit this later if things change, which they will. Anytime lawyers are involved, things will change. That's just the way it is.
There goes the head tail.
He's got that puppy dog look again, so he's thinking.
Yes.
But I would opt for option 3. It's the least likely to impact the city at this moment in time. And as things change, future council can go ahead and take a look at it at that point.
And you said in the last, how many years, there's only been, what, 5 permits?
The last
5 years.
5.5 years that I've been here, there's been 3 floodplain permits that we've
And
processed.
one of them was us.
Yeah, so 2.
So when you have just a piece of your property that's within the floodplain, do you still have to get are you required to get the flood insurance?
Me, no. I'm not in.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
talking about generic person.
You were
Some
thinking
other
about
people-
hypothetically.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No, I don't.
Because that's
I don't
really the
think
only
I-
club they have is saying, okay, you don't have to do this, but otherwise, you're not going to get flood insurance and all this other stuff. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like saying, we're not going to force you, but we're forcing you.
Yeah, you don't have to do, but we'll beat you like a baby seal.
Not exactly the way I'd put it, but
That's where you were going. I'm just willing to say it.
Any other questions
Harsh.
or concerns or comments?
So consensus is permit by permit?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
So we'll move on to departmental reports. City manager, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. Couple of things to note, drawdown update. As you're all aware, we sent a notice or letter requesting that Oregon Health Authority halt the drawdown based on the NTU levels that we're seeing in our water plant, which is in the 50 to 60 range, still is in the 50 to 60 range. That was denied, which is not a surprise. They did deny that. We're continuing to monitor the situation. We've actually been in contact with the Corps of Engineers a couple occasions. As soon as we filed the tort claim, it kind of went radio silent for a little bit, but they're communicating with us again about the drawdown in itself. And so the projection is, I believe it was the 10th of November is when they hit their target elevation, and that runs 30 days. We'll see what kind of values in the terms of NTU we start seeing here over the next 2, 3 days, 4 or 5 days. I know Green Peter Reservoir this morning was at 418 is what their release rate was. So they're doing things like Foster Reservoir is pretty much empty right now. I mean, it's way down. So they're trying to use it as kind of a settling basin. We'll continue to monitor it. I guess the key thing here, the key takeaway is we're still continuing to meet permit limits and quantity with no problem. However, we are exceeding up above that manufacturer's specification. So we'll see how that goes. Once we hit the 200 NTU level at our water treatment plant, that specification goes no more than 48 hours at 200 NTU in any 1 month. So we'll see where that lands. We're preparing to request an additional halt to that drawdown if we reach that level. So stay tuned for that, but that's the update on that so far.
Can I ask a sciencey question out of that? Or
Absolutely.
A not so smart sciencey question? Is it more of a negative impact if it rains a lot or if it doesn't? I mean, does fresh water from rain help, or does the erosion from rain add more sediment?
It's the erosion would add more. Yeah.
Just curious.
So, because once you open up that reservoir up there, which it's opened, right? And you've got all those banks that are sloughing off, and you've got all that water running in, and banks, it creates more and more and more and more.
I was just trying to balance it in my head. how
There's
that
no
worked.
root structures to hold that soil in place, so it just goes.
I got you.
So,
Thank you.
you bet. Another item of note, we received our notice to proceed today and our signed large government grant for the Cheetah Lake project. That's a $1 million grant. So we received that. We'll be moving forward on that over the course of the next, I think in process right now, what we're doing is doing some conceptual plans with the Parks, Trees, Trails Committee, trying to iron out what that conceptually is going to look like. And then we'll start the design on that. We're looking at a couple of signage changes or additions to Academy Square. Those being at the library and the senior center, to add those into our park system. We've had some issues with folks. The Academy Square, including the library and the senior center, are all included in our park system. And we've had some smoking issues, some behavioral issues that I know the police department's been working on. And so we're thinking about posting that. We're still working through the process, but we're posting that with our parks rules. So it would follow all of our other parks, and that would include the library and the senior center since they are included in that as a park. So it won't be till mid-December that we do that. We're working through a couple more things there. And last, we are going to move forward with the AV at the library for council chamber move. We're going to move forward with at least the AV for right now, since that's the ARPA funds that were there. Those have to be allocated by December 31st of this year under contract, and we will be under contract with a firm after we got 3 quotes to start that process. So we have a kickoff meeting, I believe, next week to start that out. So with that, I can answer any other questions you have, but that's all I got.
All righty. Thank you. Is there any items that council would like to bring up? No? Is there anybody from the press that would like to come forward? Anybody from the public that would like to come forward and speak? Okay. Next scheduled council meeting, December 11, 2024. With that, this meeting is adjourned at